Okay, we're official. We're underway. So thanks for everybody for coming tonight. We're going to talk about the Grandview District and all the potential transportation improvement projects you're going to see over the next 5 years. Lots of things going on, lots of things have been going on, but I wanted to give a little background and history of how we got to where we are today, what's already been done in the district, and then what's planned for the future. I'm Chad Millner, I'm the engineering director, and again we got both online and in-person folks. We'll take questions afterwards, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions as we go forward. We are going to record it and post it later to the website so others can see it. So I started making circles on all the potential projects and projects that have happened, and it started to turn into a big red blob within the district. So I'm going to talk about pretty much every circle on here, but I think the point I wanted to show here is there's a lot of work in the works for this district, and I wanted to give a little background of how we got there and where we're headed. So it really started in 2010 and 11, where this big group of residents and commission members started building a Grandview District framework. And the City Council approved the Grandview District framework in 2012. So everything we're working on here today is really based on that framework. Then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of years and other things that have been more detailed. So starting in 2016, we had the Grandview District Transportation Study. So that took the framework and came down to a transportation level and said, what can we do in the district to meet the framework, and how do we meet those needs? Then also in 2016, a developer came forward for 5220 Eden Avenue. It's called the Avidor. So that one was built, it's over there today, but with that project, it created a TIF district and opened up some funding opportunities for us to have some public improvements completed in the area of that project. In 2018, Hennepin County went out for funding requests to do the Vernon Avenue Bridge. That's a bridge over the CP rail by Devani's. And all of these projects, I'll show you graphics here in a little bit. I'm just trying to give a timeline right now in years. So they went out for federal funding and got it. So the Hennepin County has federal funding for the Vernon Avenue Bridge. In 2019, another development project came forward at the 5000 Vernon. So that's the Caribou Coffee that's there today. So that opened up some opportunities for the interlock and intersection and meeting some of those things that were in the framework and that transportation study. In 2021, we did another transportation study around the Eden Avenue roundabout. So Eden Avenue in Arcadia and Brookside, we did another transportation study that really discussed the roundabout at that location. In 21, another project came forward for the City Council and got approved, and that was at 4917 Eden. So that's right across from City Hall here. That was the old Perkins site. And along with that site, we did an East Grandview transportation study. So now we've had various transportation studies on both sides of the highway to really define what we want to do from a transportation standpoint. And again, that project created a TIF district, a tax increment financing district, that opened up some potential financing to do these improvements. That's always the key. We need the financing to do the improvements. 21 and 22 was the actual construction of Eden and Arcadia and that roundabout, and I'll show those graphics here. So that's occurring 21 and 22. In 22, the city went out for Met Council regional solicitation, so grant funding to again further the transportation needs within the district. And we put in 2 applications. One was for the bridge over Highway 100 at Vernon and 50th, and it was the way to reconfigure that bridge and the intersections on each side of it to make it more efficient and improve the pedestrian safety within the district. And the second application was for Vernon Avenue. We know from interlocking through to the southwest, there's a lack of sidewalks on that east and south side. There's a sidewalk on the west side that's right on the back of curb. So there's a lot of things that we can do better from a pedestrian standpoint along Vernon Avenue. And we're looking at, and that was an application we put in. It just didn't score high enough, so we did not get the funding for that one. Also in 22, there was an application to redevelop the old public works site, so 5146 Eden. And that development plan was approved by the City Council, and I'll show some of those details here. And then in the late 22, in November, December, we learned that we did secure that grant funding for that project over Highway 100, right here at Vernon and 50th. So lots of things going on within the district. So I'll start with what's been done and what hasn't been done and what's coming. So again, all the people that are signing online, please mute yourself, turn the cameras off. I'll do that too as you come online, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end through both online and in-person people. So starting with the interlock and interchange, I mentioned the Caribou Coffee project, development project there. That developer with that project, we were able to get extra room for easements to expand the pedestrian network on both sides of that road and also add a dual left turn lane. So it was really the first street project and improvement project to improve the traffic operations and the pedestrian safety. And that happened at that interchange, and it really started because of that development project where we had that opportunity to ask for some easements along that west side of that intersection. And that really set the stage for the Vernon Avenue Bridge project, which you'll see in a while. But I'm zooming in on improvements. This one's in the northwest corner of the Grandview District. Now we're down in the southwest portion of the district. So you're looking at Highway 100 on the right, and this is Eden Avenue, and the ball field there is the Our Lady of Grace School and Church. So that's what you're looking at. On the left-hand side is the old bus garage site, or the new Avador, the senior cooperative living apartments there. That project generated funding where we could do these improvements. So shown in yellow is a majority of the improvements. And again, it's traffic improvement operations at the intersection of Arcadia and Eden with that roundabout. We got a new wide trail on the south side to improve the pedestrian facilities. There's one little portion we got to finish next year underneath the rail bridge. And then we added a sidewalk along that whole north side of the facility, which did not exist before. So it's really some opportunities to improve the pet access, the transportation, and the traffic operations at the intersection. I also want to note that OLG did a big expansion of their site recently, and they also had to conduct a traffic study. So they looked at what we had done and what they had done, and we're tying that all together. So this project's majority done. Also related to that Avador project, the graphic again on the left, the finished product is a pedestrian bridge. So the graphic on the right, you're looking to the west. In the background this is the Grandview parking garage. So you're looking west. Behind that is the Jerry's Foods store. So this bridge is being installed this spring. It's a pedestrian bridge. That the top level of the ramp will be ADA compliant. There'll be stairs to access the second level, and then there'll be a set of stairs and access out towards the north, so you can access behind the parking lot behind Walgreens. So you'll have 3 different ways. Goes over the rail and then connects to a wide trail that connects to Arcadia Avenue. So it provides that access for this project, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also to some of those businesses on Arcadia, like the Hilltop Restaurant and some of those other ones. So you could park in the ramp, walk over to there, or you could walk over to this future development project here. So I'll just zoom in first before I talk about the development project. This is the bridge again, a little closer view. And the art panels, there's going to be 14 art panels on each side of the inside of the bridge as you walk across. Laser etched metal panels of different plants within the districts, and they'll be lighted from the inside. So 28 artistic panels on the bridge as you walk across. There'll be handrail lighting and lighting up higher, shining down on these artistic panels. And then it'll connect to that trail and landscaping that you can see on the right-hand side here. That'll connect to Arcadia Avenue heading eastbound. So that was all due to the Avador project, all those improvements. So taking a step back, now we are looking at the 5146 Eden Avenue project. This is the old public works site. So council approved this development project last year in 22. So the south portion is senior cooperative apartments. So that's the south portion. Here's the intersection down in this corner of Eden and Arcadia. So the new roundabout is right down here. And again, you're looking west. Here's the parking structure to the west, Here's that ped bridge we just talked about. So senior cooperative living is on the south portion of that site. The middle portion is a restaurant with a basement speakeasy, so that's in the middle. And the north portion is a new park. And right here it's called Grandview Yard, but the name hasn't been decided yet. The overall development is called the Grandview Yard. So it's cooperative living on the south, restaurant in the middle, and city park on the north, which connects to this new ped bridge and trail that we talked about earlier. There will be some improvements along Arcadia Avenue on that west side to improve the pedestrian network and add some parking there adjacent to the park. This project could occur as soon as this summer. It's going to be built from south to north. So as soon as that cooperative project has enough leases in there where they can get the financing, then they'll start pulling permits and breaking ground. And as they break ground and do work, then they'll coordinate with the restaurant vendor and build, once this is far enough along where they can keep heading north, and then the city will participate when it's enough room and space for us to finish the park out. So all three parties are working together on this construction project. I put the general time frame as 2023 to 2026, but that could move by a year here and there depending on how that all works out for parties. So now I'm flipping over, going over to City Hall. You can see on the left-hand graphic in the top right-hand corner. So now I'm right here at the Perkins site, the old Perkins site. This is Eden Avenue. Goes east-west across there. We have Wilson heading to the south and Grange heading north. Then we have that one driveway heading into City Hall. So this is now on the east side of Highway 100 in the quadrant right next to City Hall and the old Perkins. So the graphic here is the development project that was approved on that Perkins site. And that again opened up some opportunities for funding to do some public improvements. And the council really focused on the transportation public improvements. So how can we improve traffic operations, but really improve the pedestrian safety, the pedestrian network, finish these connections so people can actually walk from City Hall over to Jerry's and connect to that Eden Avenue project that we had just talked about on an earlier slide. So this one is going out for bid very soon, and we are proposing what you see here. Instead of the big wide offset kind of intersection over here, if you've ever tried to walk across that with traffic, it's really wide. We are proposing 2 offset roundabouts here. So that improves the traffic operations and it improves the pedestrian safety where it's much shorter crossings with a refuge island halfway across. So that's the concept that's being moved forward right now. This would be construction in 2023, so this summer. We're thinking of starting as soon as May, depending on when we finally melt all this snow and ice that's out there. We got to get the utilities in early, probably late April, early May. But I'd like to have this completely finished before school starts in the fall. That's kind of our plan, is to have it done by the end of August. So we're trying to coordinate with all the private utility companies and all the other parties, because that times pretty well on when a developer wants to start moving people into the project there across the street. So we want to coordinate all this at once. So that's 2023, that's the Eden Grange roundabouts. That's what we enabled that, and that's going out for bid very soon. The graphic on the right is Grange right by 50th. So again, at some point we want to extend a sidewalk and a big wide trail on both sides of the facility. We're just looking for that opportunity of when we'll do the Grange portion of the project. You can see we're setting ourselves up here on that portion with sidewalks and trails on both sides. But that is part of the improvements that would be funded as part of the old Perkins site development. We just don't know when quite yet. Another thing that looked at that East Grandview transportation study, which we heard from the Sunny Slope neighborhood, is it's very difficult to get out of that neighborhood. There is a lot of conflict points getting out of that neighborhood. They had concerns about making those left-hand turns, sitting out in traffic and potentially getting rear-ended. They felt it wasn't a very safe maneuver. So this was the concept and idea that came out of that transportation study to address those safety concerns. So if you're leaving the Sunny Slope neighborhood, it's a right in, right out. So you have to leave, take a right. We're going to update this intersection and traffic signal. So if you wanted to head to 50th and France, you'd have to make a U-turn here and then head back down. And that reduces all the conflicts trying to cross 4 lanes of traffic to make a left-hand turn out of that neighborhood. We'd also look at medians to make protected left-hand turns each direction. So you'd have a spot to safely sit and wait till the traffic allows you to make those turns. Same thing for City Hall. It'd be a right in, right out. So anybody leaving City Hall heading north would only be able to go eastbound. And we have 2 other driveways on the site where you can exit and go in different directions from there. This improves or reduces the conflict points. It creates these medians that tend to slow cars down by making it feel much more constricted on the roadway. So we're hoping it has a speed effect of the cars on 50th. And then it improves those. Again, you can see the sidewalks highlighted on both sides. We're trying to widen those sidewalks and make those better and safer with a boulevard and separate it from traffic. This is the concept at this point. We got a lot of details to work through with the neighbors to the north when we get there. So I put 2024 or 2026. So we don't know the year yet. We're still kind of massaging on when is the appropriate time when you see all the other projects we have going in the district. So I've already talked about 23 is the roundabouts over here. Now I'm going to go and jump back to the other side with the Vernon Avenue Bridge and the Highway 100 project that we got approval for. So the Vernon Avenue Bridge, so now we're back over in the northwest quadrant of the district. This is, you can see the note, the Vonnie's is here. Holiday gas station is up in this left corner. Here's the interlocking intersection that the city reconstructed a few years ago to create dual lefts and sidewalks, wide sidewalks and trail on the west side. So now the county got approval and they're coming through and doing their bridge project. So this bridge is located over the CP rail, and they're using our concept that we started back with the previous project and extending many of that same improvements. So big wide sidewalks and trails on both sides, a left turn to enter into Gus Young Lane. And the challenge with this one is they got to meet, the current bridge doesn't meet the railroad height requirements. So they got to raise that bridge up about 1.5 feet. And that's why it touches down into that intersection a little bit further than we anticipated with the original. So there will be a grade change here that you'll see after this project. So I mentioned the city went out for some pedestrian and traffic operations improvement, and we solicited for grant funding. And the project that we learned about is that we could reuse the existing bridge over Highway 100 for a interchange that's called a divergent diamond interchange. This is a City of Edina project. We put it forward because it improves traffic operations, it improves the pedestrian safety, and it continues to get rid of those conflict points on the highway, which MnDOT is supportive of. So we did receive regional funding, and again, it improves safety, vehicle safety and pedestrian safety. So the pedestrians would have the big wide sidewalks. If we're starting from the Vernon Avenue project, they would cross 1 lane to get into the refuge islands. Then they only have to cross 2 more lanes. So instead of crossing at a typical intersection, it could be anywhere from 4 to 6 lanes, depending on turn lanes and all that stuff. This only has 1 to 2 lanes you have to cross with a cycle, signal cycle. So there is signals on both sides. The north and south peds would merge in the middle. So you'd have a 10-foot wide pedestrian way down the center of the bridge with concrete barriers. And then as you exit the other side, again, you would access those sidewalks that were expanding on each side. So this really removes that big barrier to pedestrians. If you currently walk across that bridge today, it's got 1 sidewalk on the north side that's right on the curb. So this is going to make it safer for pedestrians to cross the bridge. This will be a full access interchange. We are not removing any accesses from the highway. You're still going to have access to northbound 100 over in this corner. You'll have access, the exit ramp is going to be extended here and changed. So it now exits up at Vernon and 50th. You'll still be able to get on the highway for southbound on this quadrant. and you'll still exit the highway in this quadrant for southbound to enter the district. So we are removing redundant ramps. So right now there's 2 on-ramps to Highway 100, and they both merge and they don't meet current safety highway standards. So that's what we're doing, is removing 1 redundant ramp, but you're still having access to northbound. So you can see down here there's X's in this portion over here where the ramps currently exit the Grange, and they exit back onto the northbound here, but they also do it here. So this is a configuration that's not supported by MnDOT and Federal Highways traffic. They don't meet the spacing of those on and off ramps. So again, it's a full access interchange. We are not removing any access here. You still can go north and southbound and exit north and southbound at this interchange. So now we have the Vernon Avenue project, the bridge project. That was a county project. Now the city has this other interchange project with the highway bridge. We both have grant funding. We don't want to impact traffic operations, and we want to be good stewards of all the grant funding that has occurred. So the blue lines on this graphic was the original Vernon Avenue Bridge project. The red is the new interchange city project. And when we merge them together, you can see it's one big project, and it's way more efficient to do this whole thing all at once. There's a huge cost savings, a huge disruption savings to the district, because this could be 2+ years if we tried to stage this half at a time or over multiple years. So what the agencies have decided to do is do it all in 1 year. Just get in there, get the impacts done in 1 year, and build it in 2025 as one combined project. And again, it still has all those access on and off the highway that we talked about in the last slide. It has the improvements for all the bikes and pedestrian facilities through this corridor. It improves that safety and spacing of pedestrians away from the cars and those users. So that's probably the biggest change of combining and doing the project over 1 year, and we're looking at 2025 would be the year to do them all together, to allow us to do the bid documents for the city bridge project. So when we looked at overall what happens when this space here, these are these redundant ramps that we're talking about removing, because they don't meet the current safety standards of MnDOT or the federal highways. So what is a possible use of this space? And we know, and we heard from our residents, many times we've heard from our residents, about the need for a fire station in the northeast part of Edina. You know, our fire stations are located at Tracy and 62. We got approval to build a new fire station down in the Southdale district. The northeast portion is looking for location. This is just starting to be a discussion point of a potential fire station number 3. It opens up property that we could use and work with MnDOT on acquiring for a fire station. It has great access to the transportation network. So that is a discussion that's happening right now. And we'll see where that leads based on the design and the discussion on the DDI. There's no other discussions about anything going over the highway other than a potential pedestrian bridge at some point that was part of the Grandview District framework. So in the framework, there was always this idea of leaving City Hall and being able to walk as a pedestrian right across and now connect to the new ped bridge we're doing on the old Public Works site. So at some point, we'd love to have a pedestrian-only bridge over the highway. So then you don't even have to use the bridge, but there's no discussions about doing any sort of cover over this highway. That was discussed years ago, and the council told us to no longer consider that as a staff. So we have not been directed to continue any of those type of discussions. So this is the only stuff that staff is working on right now, is these 2 grant projects, the roundabouts. What are we going to do with this space? And then depending on future development on this west side, where can we find a spot to put maybe a pedestrian bridge over the highway at some point to really make that access between City Hall and this new park much better. So that was my presentation. We're at 5:30, so I got a couple graphics up here just showing the different concepts. I'd welcome any sort of questions. So if you're online, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. So I'll work between the online group and the in-person group and answer questions right now. So, yes, I got a question in the room.
The area we were talking about when historic buildings are.
Yep.
I've talked with the council and the mayor about moving those two buildings down to Wooddale Park. That would be our new site for the historical buildings. Then that would open up that area so the new buildings wouldn't be there anymore. So now you have an area if you're going to build a fire station. Yes, you got that area. But has any conversation been at all, comments about moving those buildings in your conversations at all?
So the question for everybody online was, there's the historic Cahill School located here, just outside the red box I drew. So those historic buildings, has there been any discussion about moving them? There's been just a general, could they be moved? Is there adequate parking where they're at today? I would say no. But we have had no discussions on where they would go, who would move them, when they would go. I think if this fire station number 3 discussion got some steam, then I think that's the appropriate time to talk about where and how or if those things are moved.
My understanding is the buildings have to be moved by 2024 because of TIF.
Well, those.
TIF would pay for moving those buildings to Woodville Park.
So the question was, those buildings could be moved using the tax increment financing from the old Perkins site. And yes, that portion was included in the TIF district. That money could be used to move them. So again, it's a discussion for where we headed with a fire station. Do we need that space or not? Additional space, and do we move those? So, yep, the historic buildings are being considered.
I just wondered if that was in the discussion at all, because that's something that, as far as I've been concerned for many years, I helped start the historical site in 1969.
Yep.
And when we put those two buildings there, the historical, the heritage, or the range hall was there. And we moved it 200 feet in order to make that bridge, and that's when the highway was built.
Yep. So I can say it's discussions.
We moved Cahill School in there from
Yep.
But now the idea of what we're going to do with that site, I was hoping that that conversation would be in there to move those buildings by 2024, because after 2024, if it isn't moved, then we don't get the TIF money.
Yeah, it's not 2024, it's 2026, so we got time.
Well, I think
It's 5 years, it's the same funding as the transportation stuff. So I can tell you we're talking about it, and we'll see where the conversation goes with this idea of a fire station. So, yep, let's see where these other questions.
it makes to go down to, that's where the original Diamond Anywhere was down there at 50th and France, where the mill site used to be.
Yep, any.
Where the two buildings would be moved to.
Well, nothing's been decided on where it get moved. That's all. We'll be working with you and the Historical Society and the Parks Department and figure out where is the appropriate place. So I'm not going to speak to where it goes. So future discussion.
The area was first started, they
Yep.
talked about moving those two buildings to Artisan Park.
Yep. I think we've answered that. I got a bunch of other questions here. Let's get to the other ones.
They want that. They want it. So then we said, let's go to Woodville.
Yeah.
Because that's the ideal spot for it, because that's the city of Edina.
Yep. I'm not going to speak to where it's going. We don't even know yet. I can tell you I answered your question that we'll have discussions.
The discussions is going to be, that's all I need.
Yep. It will be. Anybody else in the room got questions? Yes, sir.
I understand there's been consideration of eliminating access to Highway 100 south of Eden.
Yes.
Place where it's yield. Somewhat precarious.
Yep, I can speak to that if you'd like. So the question was, what about this, again, a redundant on-ramp? So here I'm back at the graphic for the Arcadia Eden roundabout. So just to align people, here's OLG property. There's this on-ramp to southbound 100. So we've studied this multiple times. This is a high traffic accident location because you take the short ramp right here, you're looking over your shoulder, Many of our users can't make that move and they don't see the car. They're going 10 and cars are coming 50 or 60 and they play bumper cars there on the ramp. So we have approval to close this ramp, but we're not even going to consider it till these other projects are done. So the soonest we would consider it is 2026. When we do 2025 and the bigger project, then I'll probably, or early 26, just take another peek at from a traffic standpoint if it still makes sense to close this ramp at that time. So we want to get through all these improvements because we'll need the access in the short term with all the street reconstruction going on. So great question. We'll come back to that in a few years. Yep. Anybody else here in person? Then I'll get to the ones online. So thanks for hanging on.
In 2025, when you do the Vernon Bridge and the DDI, will you close down 50th? Or will there be one-way traffic at some point? Do you have any idea on that?
I don't know the phasing yet. It's just so early yet. Maybe we close from Interlochen to just short of the ramps and the bridge still functions, right? Or we do the Highway 100 bridge first and then go back to Vernon. So that whole staging question we just learned that we got the grant funding a month ago, so it's 2 months ago. So it's so new that we are working through all those details right now. So once we have a traffic management and construction staging plan, we'll continue to share that information out. We're using the Better Together Edina webpage, and we'll continue to do that. So, right now we're shooting for bridge plans for this project, all approved through all the agencies by June of 2024. So we have to have approvals from MnDOT and the layouts and all that stuff. And we'd go out for bids there in the summer of 24, and then early 25 we'd start. So staging plans are going to be coming, but we're just not there yet. So good question. And the question was, are you going to close 50th Street entirely? You're going to make it a one-way? So anything related with how this project's going to be built and the traffic staging, we don't know yet. How about we try online? So let's go. How about Bruce Kiefer? Let me unmute you and see if this works. Bruce, you have a question?
Yes, and it's related to those on-ramps that you were just talking about, going from Eden to southbound Highway 100. And that was affectionately named Death Ramp by Kevin Staunton, and it's true. I was almost crashed there twice on last Friday night. And yes, definitely, one of those needs to be removed. But in the meantime, my thought was, why not slow the traffic down that's coming on that long section of it and make them yield to the people who, coming on the short piece, can't see them coming?
Yep, great comments. We have received probably every different option and combination of comments you can think of, and those facilities are managed by MnDOT. So they review it through their traffic operations and say yay or nay whether they're going to put yield signs on this one or this one and how it works. So we send suggestions to them all the time. They're comfortable the way it's laid out right now with the yields on the shorter ramp than the longer one. So appreciate those comments. We'll continue to work with them on those, and then we'll potentially close this thing in a few years. So we get rid of the so-called death ramp. Nobody's perished there that I'm aware of. So thanks for the question, Bruce. Anything else?
No, but well done here. This all looks really great.
Thank you. I'll go down the list. Travis Erickson, I'll unmute you. There you go.
Hi, question or maybe comment around the stretch of 50th along City Hall. It's kind of difficult for pedestrians to go up and down that stretch given how narrow the sidewalks are, how often they're covered in brush, and there's really no way to get a bike through without just competing with traffic. So I just wanted to encourage you to think about maybe creative ways to make more throughput for pedestrians or make it safer for bikes to get through there.
Okay. Yeah, we are. That's one of these. That's the main focus of all these improvements is how do we make it better for pedestrians. And right now, most of the sidewalks on that portion are right on that back of curb, so not a nice facility to be walking on. So you can see here on the concept, we're trying to create that space for boulevards if we can. The graphic shows a little bit of impacts to properties, and we got to work through all those details when we get to that point. So I know some of the people in the room are very interested on that portion. So thanks for those comments. Jim Groats, you want to go next?
Yes, I have a question on the diverging Diamond interchange. I am in the Edina Executive Plaza, which is, you don't show it on your slides, but, I see that long, red, narrow item coming up. Is there some place I could go or have somebody send to me a file, PDF file that would show me, how this impacts our office building?
Yep.
As well as I have a question, does this lane coming up, does it go under the Eden Avenue Bridge?
It's great questions, Jim. So the ramp is basically we're not doing anything next. I know which building you're in. This work basically starts right underneath the Eden Avenue Bridge, just like you mentioned. So you can see we're just off the screen. I should have clipped this a little further south, but
Right.
you're basically taking the exit today, and right when you start to curve, you're just going to go straight. So there's no impacts by where your office is located. So you're underneath the Eden Avenue Bridge, and then we just build the ramp up to the interchange at Vernon and 50th up at this location. So I can definitely send you graphics and stuff. It's all in the East Grandview Transportation Study online, but if you need a link or documents, just let me know and I can send you what you're looking for, Jim.
Great. If you could send me a link, that would be great.
Okay. I'll make a note, send it to you. Okay, let's go. How about Kirk?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
So you know me, I've been involved in this for a long time because I live right in the neighborhood next to this. I hope you bear with me. I have a bunch of questions. One question I have, when you look at the Double Diamond Bridge reconstruction, there's a light on the east side and the west side of the highway, correct?
There's a traffic signal, yep, on both sides.
And there's a traffic signal at Grange Road, which is 50 yards south of that.
Yep,
I'm sorry, east of that.
yep.
So one of the things that I think is important to understand, and I understand the rationale for this, is you're closing lanes in terms of access to Highway 100, both north and south, to one north and one south.
Correct.
And so you're basically driving all of the traffic back up onto 50th Street. So you have a traffic signal at Grange Road, and then you have a traffic signal before Highway 100. And you're driving all of the traffic. And when you take care of get rid of you call it the death ramp, and put the Arcadia, or over by OLG, the roundabout, you're driving all of the traffic up to 50th Street. So that's one concern, is that you are going to be basically, because you can't, if you go down 50th in France, you can't get through during rush hour because it's backed up. So you're going to be driving a lot of traffic. Plus, the Perkins site is going to be adding a lot of cars. The apartment building that's going to be on the old construction, the old utility site on the west side is going to be adding a lot of cars. So that's a concern of mine, but I don't know if you think that's a good or a bad thing.
We got the same concerns. That's why we've done 2 traffic studies already, and we're updating those traffic models as we speak to ensure that we are not going to cause any issues here. So the 4 signals.
But how do you justify a traffic light at Grange Road and then a traffic light less than 100 yards away that's going to be controlling the entire flow of traffic to Highway 100 from the east side of Edina?
Yep, it's removing these ramps, and people today are going in multiple directions over in this location. So the Grange signal is going to see less traffic. This one will see more. But the benefit of the DDI is it's basically a free left where you will bypass the signal to get into this queuing. So there's there's opportunities and improvement of how this thing functions. And then all 4 of these signals are going to be coordinated together. They're all going to talk to each other and be coordinated so we can get the proper throughput of traffic.
So if you come north on 100 and get off at Vernon, there's no stoplight.
You have this left turn where it could be a yield, and if it's open, you can continue to go
So
westbound.
there's a yield there.
Yeah, and we're working through those details right now. Yep,
There has to be, right?
yep.
Okay, because you don't have that on your diagram.
Well, I don't have a traffic signal on this one either, so there's lots of details yet that we're working through.
Go back. It's on your other one. You have the traffic signals on your other
Yep,
one.
but here you can't tell which movements are exactly controlled by which. This is not the point of not having that level of detail on these big overview graphics. So we're
So how
working
many
through those details right now.
How many yield signs are going to be on this double diamond?
Yep, I
design?
can't answer that yet. We're still developing all those requirements that MnDOT may put on it or that the traffic operations justify to meet those safety standards put out by MnDOT and federal highways when you do this type of intersection.
I get it. But you understand my concern
Yep.
that you're driving all of the traffic to one single point to get on north and south on 100 for both West and East Edina now.
Correct.
Okay. Another question I have is, I was very involved in the Perkins project, and, Council Member Pierce was very clear with us, with the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association, that he would not approve the Perkins site unless there was a comprehensive pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic design that would help the Sunny Slope neighborhood. I don't think that you've been very clear that there is no direct plan yet. It's just all in development, which makes me unhappy, but it is what it is. Can you go to the in front of Sunny on Dale Drive? Yes, thank you. So those are going to be cement barriers, the blue lines, low cement barriers, is that correct? Like
Well, they're
curbs?
concrete medians is what we were planning. Again, this is a concept. We looked at putting on-street bike lanes, protected bike lanes. We looked at having both bike lanes and sidewalks. There's just not enough space unless we buy out the properties on the north, and that really isn't an option in our opinion. So we decided to make the sidewalks wide on both sides so people that, the families and the kids can bike on the sidewalks. And if you're comfortable being in the street with traffic, then you could bike with traffic on those right-hand lanes going through this area.
So you're 100% firm that you will not eminent domain and go into the properties north of Vernon or 50th Street?
It's not part of this is a concept yet. Do we need a little sliver for easements? I can't answer that question until we get in the final design, but my hope is, since I've been here, we've never done eminent domain for 10, almost 11 years, so I don't know why we would start doing it now, but if we don't have the space to do it within the right of way, then the city council could direct me to do eminent domain, but.
Right, you just said there isn't enough room, so.
For bike lanes and ped facilities and the traffic operations, so all those things.
Right. So the other question I have is, if you have cement median, like the dividers, how is the city of Edina going to plow that?
Yep, and again, we're working through our public
We
works.
have winter in Minnesota, right? So there's no way that a snowplow gets through those right and left turn lanes in the center.
That's what when we do design, public works is part of every one of our street designs. So we'll make sure that snow is a priority for us. Maybe we don't have a completely closed, maybe this little piece isn't there. Maybe we just focus on one. Again, this is a concept level, so not even really boots on the ground at this point. We just know it'll work, and we got to work through all those details. And Public Works is our partner on every one of these projects.
So you understand my concern when the city council said they would only vote to approve the Perkins project unless there was a complete comprehensive plan for the Sunny Slope neighborhood. Then you're telling me there's no plan. This is all concept.
We submitted the East Grandview Transportation Study, and they accepted it, and then they also accepted these improvements that came out of the study. If they didn't think that was enough, I would look for direction from them to tell me to take another look at it. So I haven't heard that from them, but if they want us to, we'd be welcome to do that.
I mean, you understand my concern, right? That's a reasonable concern to voice.
Any other questions, Kirk?
Yeah, so the other question I had is, it seems like there's a lot of going on with the Grandview District with the Canadian Pacific Railroad and adding another train line that goes under the bridge that's going to be the Grandview Bridge over by Interlock. You're aware of that, I'm assuming, right?
I am not aware of any additional train lines going through CP Rail. When you design a bridge, so I was on the project management team that Hennepin County asked me to participate for the Vernon Avenue Bridge. CP Rail will not let a bridge be built over their rail without having space for another track, even though they have no plans or any consideration at this time for an additional line. So if you just look a little bit north and south, there's not space. So right now, they just require the bridge to be built wide enough for a future potential extra thing, but I am not aware of any expansion of CP rail line at this point.
So, but I totally respect that, but you also realize this, we just built a pedestrian bridge behind Jerry's with a whole lot of foundation stone that there's no way there'd be room for two, with the pedestrian bridge behind Jerry's, there's no way you could have two rail lines built. So you're saying that the Vernon Avenue Bridge is going to be built to accept two rail lines, but the pedestrian bridge behind Jerry's that you're building, that is already built, won't support that space. Is that accurate or is that inaccurate?
Vernon Avenue Bridge, they wouldn't approve permits without being wide enough. We approved the ped bridge over the tracks onto our own property on each side. So if the rail wants to come back at some future date, take property from the city, I guess that's on their prerogative, but we designed the bridge to land on each side on our own property. So there may be space there. It's not part of our study. I didn't look at.
But you're a traffic engineer. Like, didn't that come into play when you talked about the pedestrian bridge?
I'm not the rail engineer. I'm not aware of what CP Rail does and what they need. We wanted to put a pedestrian bridge over, and we used the property that we owned on each side to do so.
And you used the rest of the TIF financing to build that bridge, correct? Because you were going to lose that TIF financing?
You don't lose it. It's either use it or it goes back to the other taxing agencies. So a portion would go back to the city as a taxing agency, either way. So we put forth a plan, and the city council approved that plan for these improvements. So again, I'm administering the wishes of the city council that they wanted the city to use these funding. So the ped bridge was part of it.
Could have gone back to the Edina Public Schools, but we built a bridge with it.
Any more questions, Kirk?
Nope, that sounds about right.
Okay, thank you. Jim Grotz, your hand is up. Do you have another question?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all the ones I see online. Anybody else in person here? We'll take a few questions.
All right, so, I mean, I think we can all appreciate the projects we prioritize where we have money to work with, hence the pedestrian bridge. Aside from that, just looking at this holistically, you know, a lot of the focus is on vehicular efficiencies and what we can make out with pedestrian improvements. And a lot of the focus is kind of on this eastern side of Grandview. I think even looking at the transportation study and what they forecasted as short-term and mid-term goals, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit maybe on that western side where you have more residents closer to the district, more apartment buildings on the western side of Vernon. So I was interested to see what any update there might be on, you know, the Vernon Avenue modernization plan, even though we didn't get the funding. Because a lot of the short and midterm goals were really to squeeze that down to single lane eventually. And just how that interfaces with the county's plan with 5 lanes going, you know, 3 lanes going west, at least 2 lanes continuing straight. If that were improved, what was the plan to get Vernon back down to 1 lane on those sides to make enough room for peds and bicycle lanes?
Yeah, the question was, the transportation study from 16 identified Vernon Avenue from this intersection, so this is interlocking, but off the page, so to the southwest, as a major, needs some major improvements. On the one side, we got this little brick thing we can't even call a sidewalk if you've ever walked it, and the other side's got a sidewalk right on the road. Part of our regional grant funding application was how can we do a road diet? We don't need 4 lanes through the district. How can we narrow that up, increase the boulevards down the middle, get some wide facilities on both sides to make it safer for bikes and peds? So that application was not successful. It didn't score high enough. This facility is owned and operated by the county. So they said, city, go ahead and do what you want if you can find the money and want to do it, but we are not participating at this point. We don't have money to do a road diet here. So we continue to look for funding opportunities. We're hoping maybe the infrastructure bill might be something. The Inflation Reduction Act might have some funding, so we would like to repackage that to go forward. The other question was, how do we transition from 4 lanes that's shown here to 2 lanes with turn lanes? So the next piece, we already had that designed, is that transition. And the county was supportive of the transition. So the driveway that goes into the Walgreens, from there up to this one, we could transition from 2 lanes back to 4 lanes. So the traffic studies support this configuration here, but as you head to the southwest, it supports that road diet. So that one little block between those 2 driveways would be that transition point to get it down to the 1 lane each direction with a turn lane down the where needed, turn lanes where needed at those offshoot roads, and then we can make those bike and ped facilities much wider. So we don't have available funding at the city level. We're looking for those opportunities for future funding.
So some of the TIF funding being used for the old Perkins site, is that limited to just the east side of Grandview, or is this all in the same district?
Oh, that's a good question. The question was the TIF funding. So I've brought up 2 different TIF districts and how and where that money can be used. It's very prescriptive by state law that you can only use it if it benefits that. So the Perkins development, this is as far as we can stretch it. It's 50th, Grange, and Eden. The one on that side is just that little piece. So we would love to use the money over there, but we can't use it over there. So the districts that have been created so far do not stretch over to Vernon. Now, if we got future development along Vernon, maybe a future district is created and we have that opportunity to use some funds. But right now, we can't use any of those. TIF funds can't be used over there by state law. Yep.
And I guess just last comment, a lot of, because of that likely, a lot of the improvements I see for pedestrian movement and access is really interior to the site, maybe except the eastern side. But there's a lot of opportunity, and safety just is hinging on getting people safer to the Grandview site.
Yes.
Walking or biking. So even with this bridge project, I know there's like an informal trail in the woods that people use, and it looks like that's being choked off. And again, getting all these neighbors across Vernon isn't being addressed with any of these. And it'd be nice to see some priority beyond that versus some other improvements.
Yep.
roadway-wise.
So the comments were, these are great improvements right where they're happening for bikes, peds, but how do we get people to them from the other neighborhoods? And specifically here, there's this bandit path that comes up from Brookside up behind the Holiday. It's on private property. It's on the rail. So I talked to the right-of-way management person, and one person said, great idea, we'll give you an easement. Then I actually tried to get approval of that, and they said, we will never give you an easement for that trail. We don't want people in our corridor. And we may put up fences to stop people from doing that. So I've tried to work with the rail there because they own that property to get that established as a permanent connection. I agree with you. I thought that'd be a great connection. The other thing that we just got approved with City Council is for the PACS fund, the Pedestrian and Cyclist Safety Fund. We now have an equity criteria of where we should be doing projects based on some parameters of demographics, income, access to bus and transit. And we're trying it for the first time this year on scoring projects to make sure we're doing them in the areas that are most needed. So we're going to try the scoring criteria. If you're interested, I could send that to you and you can check it out. But it's just one thing that let's really look at those connections and where does it make most sense. If people are trying to get to a bus stop and there's a missing sidewalk segment, that should score higher than a sidewalk that doesn't really go to parks or schools or a bus or transit area. So we're really looking at trying to, how do we better prioritize those projects? Yes?
You know that I am interested in cut through, envision that narrow strip of land dividing Sherwood and Vernon between the Dinah family positions
Yep.
and where the bus parks by the Beacon Station. So somewhere in the 2016 plan, there's provision to do a cut through from Grandview Square through that strip of land where the traffic light there.
Yep.
What is the timetable for that?
So the question was, I wish I had a graphic of that, but I don't. So the question, if you're familiar with Sherwood and what's the gas station on that, Mobile's on that side, the buses take Sherwood and they park on that exit. In the 2016 transportation study, there was a potential of connecting the Vernon right just west of that location. And could that improve traffic operations? Could it improve access? Again, Vernon Avenue is controlled by the county. We have no funding for that interchange project. It's still part of that 2016 study. If it becomes an opportunity where there's a development project or Vernon's doing improvements, that's when we'll look at it. So there is no timing. The question was, when's that going to happen? There's no time frame for when that would happen at this point.
It's of interest to me as a resident of Grandview Square, because coming out of Grandview Square or the library or the Dinah family positions, there's two ways out.
Yep.
It's hard to turn left sometimes.
Yep. So the comments were there was this individual here as support for that access improvements because it's difficult to get in and out of Grandview Square. That intersection could help with those movements. So again, it's part of that 16 study, looking for opportunities. It's not on the table at this point. It's off the table either. It's part of that study, and we look for those opportunities with either a county project or we get grant funding to improve Vernon, and then we'd look at that again. So great comments. Yes, sir.
Good question on the sound wall on the
Yeah.
side of
Yep.
100 North. Is that going to be put off till 2025, or would that potentially be built before 2025?
Same time frame. So right here you can see it on this little edge here, the new sound wall that would come up from Minnehaha Creek up to 50th Street. So that's still part of this overall bigger project. So most likely 2025. Maybe they would see an opportunity if we go out for bids in June of 24 that the contractor might want to do the wall the fall of 24 just to get it done and out of the way because it's all going to be part of this one project. So it might be, but most likely it's 25. Yep. Good question. Lou?
Yeah, the climate action plan calls for a reduction in BMT of 7% by 2030. And looking at developments along 50th Street and Vernon, it looks like this is optimizing traffic flow, so it's going to be reducing BMT. Did you do any studies on reducing BMT?
Nope, we're looking at improving the bike ped facilities to give people options, and we want people to use those facilities. Right now, there's too many gaps in the system that they won't even use it. So let's first build out that bike and ped network, and then we continue to measure traffic operations to see any changes in those traffic over time. I'm hoping when we build out a lot of this stuff that we would see some reductions in traffic because people can now walk or bike, and with the added units and apartments in the district, we hope they walk and bike versus just getting in your car to go across the street to Jerry's or Hilltop or the new restaurant over in that old public works site.
Everything here is on traffic flow. I mean, everything is protected left turns, additional left turns. You're basically putting highway infrastructure in the city.
Sure. Yeah, so the question, I forgot to repeat the question, was have we done any studies? The Climate Action Plan has a goal to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And the question was, have these concepts been studied to show that they're reducing vehicle miles traveled? And And I would say, no, we're building out those alternative, the multimodal networks for bikes and peds with the hope that people choose to use those instead of drive through this district. I see, Kirk, do you have your hand back up? Do you have another
Yeah.
question? Okay.
I had one more question. So, there's been a lot of talk about the need with the added infrastructure in terms of apartment buildings in Edina. We need to add the number of fire departments. I've never heard of the site in front of the city hall being discussed as like a number 3 fire department. Now, I could be wrong. I've been to a lot of meetings. Is there a possibility that the clover leaf taking out where the X's are could allow for more apartment buildings in front of City Hall? Has that been discussed to your knowledge in City Hall?
5 years ago, there was discussions about uber dense development through this whole piece with the lid concept, and council said, no, that's not happening. So right now we're showing this space is open, potentially after the project, like it's shown with the X's. I put a box around it because we're starting to have discussions about a fire station. Ultimately, the city council is going to direct staff what they want to see there. So recent discussions of this space, there's been no discussions on additional apartment buildings there since we've started working on these concepts with the East Grant transportation study in 21. So I'm not aware of any discussions of apartments in that location.
Yeah. If they did a fire department there, and this is not my wheelhouse, it's yours, would they need to move the Cahill School and Grange Hall with a fire department there, or would that be potentially left, the historic site be left alone and they could build a fire department there? Because I know there's a certain amount of acreage, I thought it was 2.5 or 3 acres that a fire department needed to be viable.
We don't know yet. It's basically just a big rad X or circle on the map or square, whatever you want to call it. We don't know yet. It literally is just, hey, look at this space. It could be a fire station. We have not put any sort of effort on how this would work here, but it's just, we knew that they were looking for space. Here's some space that might be available, and moving the historic buildings may or may not be needed to make that work. So that's a future study and discussions that would be ongoing with the council and our fire department.
If they decided to move the historic buildings, would that red box expand to Acadia Avenue? That would get bigger?
I can't speak to, I mean, the only reason I would see if we need to move those buildings for a fire station, you would move the fire station further south to occupy some of that space for the historic buildings. But again, it's just a box on a map. I don't know the size and space they exactly need for a fire station at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Well, I don't see any other questions online. It is after 6. So I think unless people, I'm available, you know where to find me. I had emails, phone numbers, happy to discuss with people anytime you need to. So thanks for attending online and in person. If you want any of these graphics, please just let me know and I'll send them out. We're going to post this recording online, so you'll see that too. So if your neighbors are interested, send them my way and I can give them the link to this when it's posted afterwards. So really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Chad.